Hello? Beshki. Can I speak to George, please? Yes, this is Hedy. George, have you spoken to the Navy about our invention? Yes, and what did they say? What? It's too cumbersome? But I thought you said that the technology could be made so small that it would fit into a pocket watch. How could they say it is too heavy? Well, come over and we will make it better. Yes, I am sure this technology will help us beat the Nazis, and I think the Navy knows it too, George. Come over soon. Okay, ciao. I love inventing. And I don't invent for money. I've had plenty of that. I invent because it makes my life more manageable. Whenever I was not making films, I was usually at my drafting tables or seated on the floor. I've always preferred drawing on the floor, actually. I think predictable people sit in chairs, boring people. And I can excuse everything but boredom. Boring people don't have to stay that way. But Hollywood nightlife was a bit boring to me. It was mind-numbing. It was useless conversation, and without the aid of intoxicants, I couldn't handle it. And I never did like to drink. I like to drink a milkshake more than a martini. But Hollywood nightlife was not all bad. I remember one time, after we had just finished shooting Algiers, my first Hollywood film, and the entire cast and crew was celebrating and having a wrap party. I'd never heard of this before. And I was in my dressing room, laying on my couch and listening to a Berlitz English lesson playing on my phonograph. And then there was a knock, and I thought, oh, there's another production assistant coming in. Hedy, join the party. But then the door opened, and who was it but Clark Gable? I had never seen a more beautiful man in my entire life. And he sat down next to me, and he said, you know, Hedy, we are very lucky as actors. Most people, they can only expect money in return for the work that they do, but we are actors. Not only can we expect money, but we can expect the admiration of hundreds of thousands of people. And then he picked up my foot, and he started to give me a foot massage. I was paralyzed. I was in heaven. But I always wondered when Clark's prediction would come true for me. Because every film that I did, it seemed the American people found more reasons to insult me. They insulted my acting, which for me was everything. But they never insulted my beauty. They called me the most beautiful woman in the world. A name that I could never outgrow and I could never change. And no matter where I have lived, Vienna, Hollywood, I have known that the words beautiful and stupid have always gone together. And I have made some bad choices in my life, yes. I've chosen the wrong scripts. I've chosen the wrong movies. I've chosen the wrong husbands. But it's only because I wanted. I wanted so much. I escaped Austria just before the war. And I will never forget, I was on a voyage to America on the French ship, the Normandy. And I met Louis B. Mayer of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. And I will never forget walking into the room. And Louis B. Mayer looked at me and he said, "A woman's ass is for her husband, not for the public to see." Of course, I knew he was referring to the first film that I had done, which had made me famous in Europe, a film called Ecstasy. But I couldn't help but giggle, because while he was saying this, he was staring at my derriere. I always had a power over men. I always did. Mr. Mayer, he wanted that his female actresses be pure, be beautiful, but he had no problem philandering with them himself. In fact, Daddy Mayer, as he liked to be called, he was very good at making me a star. But once I was a star, he did not know what to do with me. In fact, I would wait 6 months, 7 months, 8 months between films, and I had nothing to do. I didn't want to get into trouble, and so I had to pass the time. I had to invent. Now, after I had filmed Algiers, I had noticed. You see, I had lost quite a bit of weight for the role. The wardrobe department needed to stuff my brassiere in order to create for me an optimal size. I couldn't believe it. It was for this reason that I first learned of George Antheil, the bad boy of music. I did not know anything about his musical compositions. What I knew, I had read in the magazines. He had written a whole series of articles for Esquire speaking about glandular endocrinology. I thought maybe he could help my problem by making my glands a little bigger. And one night, I met George at a dinner party hosted by the fashion designer, Adrian. And George and I started talking. And I realized there was so much more we had in common. There was not just the fact that he could help me with my problem, but that we were both native German speakers. We were both classically trained professional pianists. And we were both inventors. And then we realized that we both liked the idea of beating the Nazis. And I knew I had found a partner, someone who could help me to implement the ideas that I had begun to create. You see, my first marriage back in Austria was to a man named Fritz Mandl, a munition supplier, and I had learned so much about torpedoes, artillery, and machine guns. And I knew that torpedoes could be jammed very easily, and in order for us to beat the Nazis, we had to learn how to create a torpedo which could not be jammed. I knew George could help me. And so that night, after I left the party, I went outside to his automobile, and I took my lipstick, and I scrawled my phone number across his windshield. I figured that would be a subtle cue. And the next night, George and I were in my home, and we had begun to invent. We were seated together at a piano, and we were playing a game. George would start to play a song, and as soon as I understood which song he was singing, I would start to play as well, and we would play in unison. It was like Name That Tune, but for pianos. And then one time, George started to play, and I began to follow, and suddenly I realized an idea. We were communicating with one another, yet we were changing all the time. And then I knew that the idea was born. I thought it could be called frequency hopping, and it would allow a transponder and a receiver to communicate with one another simultaneously and always changing. There would never be an opportunity to jam the signal. And then I knew we had begun to create our secret communication system, what would become patent number 2,292,387. But George will be coming over soon, and I have to get ready. And so the next time you come over, I will tell you more about our secret communication system. I will tell you all about frequency hopping. And maybe you will realize that I was so much more than the most beautiful woman in the world. In fact, I was the most beautiful inventor in the world.